absolute fireworks and a possible fight of the night at bantamweight. We have Adrian Yanez taking on the Zohan, Randy Costa. Matt, I absolutely love this fight. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at MattAllenFNP. You can find me at CraigAllenFNP. And the channel, well, it's at Fight Night Picks. Matt, we have a battle of the junk food. What can you tell us about it?
Fights like this don't happen in the UFC all that often. Normally, the UFC, A, doesn't like it when fighters represent their own brands outside the UFC, but also, we don't normally get prospects of this caliber fighting each other so early on in their careers, and that's what makes this fight so exciting. And I know there's a lot of people just like us who almost call for these guys to wait until they're a little bit more progressed into their MMA careers before we match them up, but I gotta be honest, I think this fight is an absolute treat buried on the preludes, because Adrian Yanez is a guy who, it's not just us talking about him, it is pretty much everyone across the UFC is talking about Adrian Yanez and the hype that he has right now in the UFC. He's not just compared to a small Jorge Masvidal because of his fighting style and his looks. He's getting very similar results to Masvidal, at least in the later half of Masvidal's career, because for the longest time, Masvidal was almost known as the split decision king, and then he became known for his crazy boxing. Adrian Yanez is just known for the crazy boxing and not having the close split decisions to begin with, and this fight against Randy Costa is going to be interesting because we're going to get the answer of who really is the prospect at 135. I really do think this fight's going to answer that.
It should be a great one. Now, I had the knock against Randy Costa, the fact that when he came into the UFC, he had a great record. He was getting wins that you wanted to see. 46 seconds, 11 seconds, 111, 42. But the guys he was fighting, 0-4, 0-0, 5-9, 0-1, it really scared me. He got the incredibly short notice call-up back in 2019 against Brandon Davis. He lost by rear naked choke, but it was a lot of fun while it lasted. That was UFC 236, Holloway versus Poirier, number 2. Dustin Poirier, interim champ? Wowee. But then after that, he beat Boston Solomon, and he threw everything and the kitchen sink at him in that fight. But it was the home for the right hand that Boston Solomon it almost looked like he couldn't see it coming. And every time, it just hit over and over again. The neat thing about the guy that is Randy Costa, and we really saw that in the Journey Newsom fight, and you can kind of touch on it a little bit more, I'll pass the torch, is the fact that his footwork's wonky, and he always leaves guys guessing. And even in the Newsom fight, you could see Newsom's hands were down, almost as if to block the body kick.
It was a very similar knockout to the one that Rose Namajunas had over Weili Zhang not that long ago, because it feels like a lot of the time when someone gets knocked out in under a minute, we like to say, oh, it was just a flash KO, it was a fluke. But you can actually set up a knockout in a very short amount of time, and that was what we saw in that Journey Newsom fight. The footwork that Randy Costa shows to his opponent is very interesting. It is very Lyoto Machida-esque, to where he likes to feint his kicks a lot with kind of moving his hips. You'll see that a lot in the Journey Newsom fight, where he's kind of moving in this almost like figure 8 pattern, switching stances a lot, but he is feinting kicks constantly, and for a guy who has really good boxing, that's just a great way to almost feint your way on the inside to get to where you're good at to begin with. And that's what's going to be the interesting thing about this fight, because I'm going to say something that might seem controversial, but then I'm going to explain my point. I actually think Randy Costa has more power than Adrian Yanez in this fight. I do think that the timing and the speed, though, lies with Adrian Yanez. I really do feel like the hand speed of Adrian Yanez is the thing that puts his power up to the next level, because if anything is true in MMA, it's that speed kills. If you don't see the shot coming, it's going to hurt you that much worse, and that's what Adrian Yanez has basically made his young career off of up until this point. He's not only a great boxer, he's a phenomenal counter striker, and I'm actually going to steal something that Luke Thomas brings up all the time. He likes to strike on the half beat. You see a lot of fighters, this is going to sound, I'm going to go on a Robin Black tangent. Fighting can be like dancing where there's a rhythm sometimes, and you can tell that when guys step, they almost have a rhythm to their fight. Adrian Yanez is great at breaking up his opponent's rhythm, and it's not something you often see from an unranked fighter.
There's a fighter that you see, and this is at the upper echelon, that Adrian Yanez kind of borrows something from, to borrow from the Robin Blacks and Luke Thomas and the great analysts that are out there. You talk about hitting on a half beat. You watch Max Holloway in any of his fights. The Brian Ortega one's a good example. I'll go with Calvin Kattar because, well, the Boston connection or the Massachusetts connection, but every time that Kattar would try and do something, Holloway's going 1, 2, and then as Cater's walking away, bang, bang, I'm throwing an extra couple. Adrian Yanez does exactly that. You see that in the fight against Rodriguez. It's like, okay, he's done. I can kind of move away, and then bang, you get hit by a head kick, and you're floored, and you're knocked out. Adrian Yanez's last fight is the one that, it didn't win me over. I think I was already won over. We had the conversation with him in This Week in MMA. It's a lot of fun. You can check it out. And
he has quite a bit to say about one half of this weekend's main event as well.
He does. And you know what? That's a good time. Let's clip that one in right now. Really, you're in one of the busiest divisions in the sport. It's popping off. You get TJ Dillashaw coming back into the fold in the new year. What's your take on the top tier of the division and the return of the former champion TJ Dillashaw?
I'll speak of the state of the division first, then I'll answer the TJ Dillashaw. The state of the division, man, and it's nothing but killer city, man. It's all killers. There's no like even in the top 30, you got nothing but killers. You know, I consider myself like one of those killers as well, man. There's like a whole list of people, man, a whole list of people, and like in the top 15, any one of those guys can beat each other on any given day, and that actually like really excites me because it gives me something to work forward and work towards too. It's like, oh man, like dude, like look at the Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera like fight, dude. Nobody really knew like Chito Vera like that until after he did that to Sean O'Malley. You know, we all like if you were a fan of the sport and you watched the fights, you knew Chito Vera is a motherfucker. You know, so just like a lot of these guys, you got like Ricky Simone, that guy's a beast, and you got all these other fighters. You got Marlon Moraes. You know, even though he kind of fades out, you know, he's still nobody wants that first round Marlon Moraes. Man, like, dude, just look at the top two guys. You got Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. Those guys are freaking beasts. I personally think that Aljamain might have this one, a 5-round decision, but man, it's a really stacked division, and it really excites me because man, there's a whole bunch of road killers, and I get to go against those guys, and that freaking excites me because I'm just like dude, like this is what I wanted to do. Like I'm living my dream. I'm going out there and I get to fight these guys. Like yeah, like it's really exciting. The return of TJ Dillashaw on that hand. I don't know. He shouldn't come back to the title like that. He's saying he should get a title shot, man. I don't think so, man. Yeah, he should get at least a win or two to get himself back in there. But man, I don't know, man. The guy was trying like I heard his interview. I heard snippets of his interview. I didn't really hear like too much of his interview, and I'm just saying I don't know, man. Like in his own head, he was trying to like he was saying like, well, if you got away with it, he'd be like, yeah, no, I'd try to find a way to justify it. I was like, well. I was like, man, if you're admitting it, like at least you're man enough to admit it, but at the same time, you get no respect from me. You're out there blatantly cheating, going out there trying to like get ahead of your opponent, and you're trying to cheat the system. I don't like that. I don't like cheaters. You know, I'm a clean guy. I take Thorne supplements, you know, provided from the UFC and everything. So, coming from a guy who's at the top of the level using EPO, you know, it really kind of just pisses me off, you know, because you got to, if you really want to get there, you work hard for it. If you have to take banned substances, you just get the fuck out the sport, man. Yeah, sorry for cussing, man. That I was like, shit.
No, man, it's definitely. It's definitely understandable. I mean, you hate to see it, especially at the highest level, like you said. But his win over Gustavo Lopez, all the Dillashaw stuff aside, was impressive because the real question was, how can Yanez kind of hang with some of these guys that are going to take him down? He had that split decision loss against Miles John with LFA, but he fought big names over there. Like Kyle Estrada is one of those guys that, hey, did he make it to the UFC or has he made it yet? No, but you look at the guys that Kyle Estrada's fought and you look at the performances that he's put on, they're very impressive. That was a split decision win. Then he ends up in the big show. And you've seen those finish wins, even the one on Contender Series after Estrada to beat Brady Huang, where he sends him to the shadow realm. It's incredibly impressive. So, Randy Costa, a little bit more kickboxing. Adrian Yanez, from what we've seen, just a strict boxing. But I still, style for style, this is such a great fight. And like you said, you got Costa coming in here at 27. You got Yanez at 27. Peak powers right now. I can't wait for this fight.
The last time we had a fight kind of similar to this is when the UFC tried to put Brandon Thatch and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in like a weird main event. This was years ago, and then Wonderboy ended up falling out, and they did Benson Henderson versus Brandon Thatch. Flexing a little bit of MMA knowledge right there. But it's the truth. Like, these are two genuine prospects, and I'm going to say this right now. No matter what the result is this Saturday, I honestly think both guys will be ranked at some point, and I could see these guys having a rematch later on when they both are ranked. Because A, this is one of those rivalries that anybody can get along for because there's really no bad blood. They're just two really high quality prospects. And we don't have this as a fight of the night contender because we think Yanez is just going to run over Costa. I will say I favor Yanez ever so slightly because this is the really big X factor I'm going to come down to. The fact that Randy Costa actually switches his stances, I think will be a mild detriment to him in this fight. Because something we see often out of guys who do switch stances is that defensively they're extremely sound in one version of that stance, and then they will suffer slightly in the other version of their stance. I'm not saying Randy Costa is one of those guys, but if you are, Adrian Yanez is going to expose it. He's going to force you, the natural kickboxer, to become a boxer. I really do think Adrian Yanez is going to crowd the space as much as he can on a guy like Randy Costa, and if he can turn this into a boxing fight, which is really dangerous against a guy like Randy Costa, and honestly, most other guys in the division, I wouldn't say, hey, turn it into a boxing fight against Randy Costa, but I really do think if Yanez can get on the inside, his hand speed will be shown off to huge effect.
If you see it for Randy Costa, a lot of sites are going to have him out of Lausanne's mixed martial arts. He's actually at a Sanford MMA. He's one of 3 fighters that I could find on this card, and the other 2, they're actually matched up to fight each other. We did a prediction video. Ian Heinisch and Brendan Allen both fighting out of Sanford for their fights on this card, not against each other. So that could be a great thing for Costa. Implement some of those leg kicks. Man, who's a great leg kicker there? Well, Jason Jackson's good at everything. He's my premier Sanford guy, but Gilbert Burns, the list goes on. Great fighters there. I love the fight. In terms of the odds, Adrian Yanez is the favorite. Open to -170. He's -196 right now. For Costa, open to +145. He's a +161. I don't want to look at the Tapology votes because it hurts my feelings. This is the definition of a Dr. Pepper and Reese's Pieces fight. Not a sponsor, so just throw that one out of there. But it's our pop and popcorn for sure. When I look at the fan vote, 663 total votes, 85% Yanez, 70% by knockout. For the 15% that have Costa, 45% by decision, and 46% by knockout. Matt, it has to be said, all of his wins are in the first round, and his 1 loss is in the second. I like the fact that Yanez has fought a 5-round fight in the past against Miles Johns. His fight in the main event against Estrada was only a 3-rounder, but Adrian Yanez has the experience. I like that as a factor, but if Costa goes out there and starts to pepper the legs, work the body, work his kicks into this game, Costa definitely has an opportunity as a dog. I love the fight. I'm going Yanez, but I think it's a really close one.
Okay, yeah, this fight should be amazing. Again, I am ever so slightly going to pick Adrian Yanez, but this is one of those fights where I would not be surprised no matter how it does end. Again, I do feel like the hand speed of Yanez is going to be the overall big factor in this fight. Even go back to the Brandon Davis fight for Randy Costa, and I know you can't take a lot from that fight because it was on such short notice for Costa, but Davis was able to hurt him when he was able to make it into a boxing fight, when he was able to get on the inside of the range. And the other thing that Yanez does, kind of similarly to Davis, oddly enough, he does go to the body with his boxing combinations, and that was something that Davis was able to do to full effect against Costa. Again, should be a great fight, but final prediction, I like Adrian Yanez.
Both of us going ever so slightly with Houston's own Adrian Yanez to get the win. Can't wait for the fight. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have and whether you prefer Dr. Pepper's 23 flavors to Reese's Pieces. We're going soft drink versus food. It's a weird battle. You let us know. I love this one. And at the top, bantamweight banger. Corey Sandhagen taking on TJ Dillashaw. You're not going to want to miss this. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.